I had always been the reliable one, the one who fixed things, made the tough decisions, and worked behind the scenes to make sure everything went smoothly. So when my brother Kyle called to say he was getting married, I didn't hesitate to fly home. The family had never been the easiest to navigate, but it was important to me to be there for him. I arrived at the house early, eager to get involved in the preparations. The ceremony was to take place in the sprawling backyard of our parents' estate. I rolled up my sleeves and started helping set up the tables for the reception, arranging the chairs, adjusting the linens, and making sure everything looked perfect. Then she walked into the room. My stepmom, Vanessa, dressed to impress as always. Her eyes immediately scanned the room, a critical edge in her gaze. "You," she said, her voice dripping with a mix of disdain and forced politeness, "you're just the mechanic, right?" It wasn't the first time she had belittled me, but the words stung more than usual. I glanced at her, biting my tongue to hold back the sharp retort that hovered on the tip of my tongue. "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral, "just the mechanic." But what Vanessa didn't know was that I had been biding my time. I had been planning for years, watching her manipulate and control everyone around her, including my father. She thought she had me figured out. A simple, overlooked cog in the machine. But she was wrong. I was no mere mechanic. I was the one who knew how to make things tick, how to turn everything she had worked for into dust. And I was going to use it against her. The seed of revenge had been planted long ago, and now, in the most unexpected way, it was finally time for it to grow. Vanessa turned away, her heels clicking sharply against the patio tiles as she strutted toward the caterers, shouting something about champagne flutes not being polished. I sat down quietly beside a half-assembled table, dusting off my hands, pretending to check my phone. But my mind was already racing. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I was more than just the mechanic. What she didn't know, what no one in that house knew, was that in the years I'd been gone, I'd built something powerful. After graduating from MIT with a degree in mechanical engineering, I had taken a job in a small robotics startup in California. It didn't take long before I realized I could do better on my own. So I left, founded my own company, and silently built an empire in the shadows. A company specializing in military-grade encryption systems, cybersecurity, and automated AI defense protocols. My name wasn't on any public record by design. I let others take the spotlight while I operated from behind closed doors. But I had access to data, access to deals, access to Vanessa's entire financial operation. Because her husband, my father, trusted me. He had once said, "You're the only one who never asked me for anything. That's why I know I can trust you." And he gave me limited but valuable access to their investment portfolios for advice whenever they were making big moves. It was access I never abused. Until now. Until she opened her mouth and reminded me why I left in the first place. I took a slow breath. This wasn't about bitterness. It was about justice. She had humiliated my mother when she was alive. She turned my father against her. She cut me out emotionally, dismissing me at every holiday, every milestone, every family gathering like I was an unpaid intern in my own family's legacy. Now, on the day of Kyle's wedding, the one event where I'd promised myself I'd keep the peace, she crossed the line again. Just the mechanic. I pulled my phone from my pocket, slid my sunglasses up my nose, and stepped away from the crowd of staff prepping the backyard. I walked behind the guest house where no one could hear or see me and opened my secure app. Vanessa had spent the last 9 months putting together the biggest merger of her career. A $600 million deal with a European biotech firm that would propel her company into the global spotlight. Everything hinged on today's final wire transfer. And I had built the firewall that protected the financial data center her firm used. Not only that, I had installed a contingency access protocol that allowed emergency override in case of a breach. She never knew it was me. Her firm hired a private contractor. They didn't know that contractor was a shell company I owned. With a few taps, I opened the encrypted network and began a silent infiltration. I wasn't going to steal. No. That would have been easy. I was going to corrupt the data logs of the deal just enough to make it look like fraud, to raise red flags, to trigger audits, to freeze accounts, to make the investors back out last minute, all without ever tracing it back to me. I hovered over the button. One more tap and everything she built would start to unravel. But I paused, because I didn't want to do this out of anger. I wanted to be cold, calculated, precise. I opened my camera and snapped a picture of myself smiling by the pool. I sent it to my business partner Sam with a single sentence, "Light the match." Sam didn't respond. He didn't need to. He knew what that meant. Vanessa's firm would receive a surge of financial errors by the end of the hour. Nothing catastrophic yet, just enough to delay, to spark panic, to whisper uncertainty in the minds of those who trusted her most. I returned to the reception area. Kyle spotted me and waved from across the lawn. He looked happy, innocent. He never knew what Vanessa was really like. He thought she was just controlling, not cruel. I smiled back at him. He deserved a good day. So I stayed quiet. I stayed calm. But beneath my calm exterior, the plan had already begun. Over the next few hours, I mingled. I sipped a drink. I danced with my cousin. I toasted the bride. I laughed with old friends. And all the while, Vanessa's phone buzzed again and again. I could see her irritation growing with every alert. She excused herself from conversations, took calls by the fountain, snapped at the servers for no reason. She was unraveling. Perfect. She didn't even notice that I had stopped pretending to be helpful. Didn't notice that I sat at the edge of the garden with my laptop open under the guise of watching the live stream. What I was actually doing was escalating the next phase. I accessed the public records database and anonymously submitted a tip about irregular corporate filings from her company. Then I activated a loop-back protocol to make the European firm's legal team suspicious of insider trading. All of this, just code. Lines of commands I'd spent months perfecting in case I ever needed them. I had never thought I'd use them on family, but then again, was she ever really family? Or just a vulture who swooped in when my mother died and picked the bones clean? She didn't deserve loyalty. She deserved consequences. The kind that came not with fire and fury, but with silence. The kind of revenge that didn't look like revenge. The kind of revenge that didn't look like fate. Like a string of unfortunate events. But they weren't random. They were mine. My design. And she never saw it coming. The tone remains suspenseful and the formatting maintains a gap after every sentence as requested. We now move into the unraveling aftermath of the wedding where the real storm begins. The wedding ended beautifully. At least for everyone else. There were lights strung across the oak trees. Laughter echoed across the yard. Wine flowed freely. The music played long into the night, but I didn't stay for the dancing. I had done what I came to do. I had helped. I had smiled. And I had already delivered the strike. That night I returned to my hotel room in town, a quiet place on the edge of the city, overlooking the hills. While everyone slept peacefully, I opened my laptop again. Sam had already sent the preliminary report. The files were corrupt. Half the records showed dates that didn't match. Others were duplicated. One major account looked like it had been accessed by two different people from opposite sides of the world at the same time. It was the perfect storm of red flags. And the European biotech firm? They noticed. They issued an immediate hold on the merger. Vanessa didn't know it yet. She would find out by morning. And when she did, the real chaos would begin. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The silence in the room was soothing. Not the silence of guilt, but of completion. This was not an impulsive act. This had been years in the making, a response not just to a sentence she uttered today, but to a lifetime of undermining, of smirking glances and cutting remarks. I closed my eyes and slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I took my time, got coffee from a local cafe, walked through the Saturday farmers market. My phone buzzed around 9 a.m. It was Kyle. I picked up immediately. "Hey, congrats again, bro," I said. His voice, usually calm, was filled with confusion. "Hey, weird thing. Vanessa's freaking out?" I smirked. "About what?" "She got an alert. Her team says something went wrong with the merger documents. She thinks it's a hack." "Yikes," I said, sipping my coffee. "That sounds serious." "Yeah," Kyle sighed. "She just stormed out of the house in tears. Took Dad's car. She never cries, man. Not even when Grandma died." I stayed silent for a moment. Then I said, "Maybe it's just a scare. These big deals get messy sometimes." "Yeah?" "Maybe," Kyle said. He didn't know. And he didn't need to. I hung up and walked slowly down the sidewalk, watching the morning sun bathe the street in gold. I had given her enough rope. She just didn't know she'd already hung herself with it. Vanessa's first move was to call in her IT department. They would spend the next 12 hours running diagnostics, trying to find a breach that didn't exist, because this wasn't a breach. It was an invitation to panic, to doubt, to self-destruction. By noon, she had fired 2 department heads, accused a junior analyst of sabotage, froze 3 internal accounts. The investors started asking questions. Where was the confirmation email? Why were the shares not moving? Why did the documents appear tampered with? She couldn't answer, because none of it made sense, because I had made sure of it. She booked a flight to Zurich that afternoon, desperate to salvage the deal in person. I watched her movements through the backdoor access I still had to her calendar. She'd be gone for 3 days, and that was all the time I needed. Back in California, Sam and I initiated Phase 3. We contacted the European firm ourselves, through another shell company. We presented them with independent analysis showing high risk of legal liabilities due to Vanessa's inconsistencies. We posed as a consultancy firm, offered to audit her company. They didn't accept the offer. They didn't need to. The information was enough. By Monday, the board of the biotech firm had voted. Merger suspended indefinitely. Merger suspended indefinitely. They issued a statement to the press citing unforeseen irregularities and possible misconduct. Vanessa saw the headline on the tarmac. Before she even stepped on the plane. She never made it off the phone. One investor pulled out. Then another. Then 4 more. Over $300 million in capital evaporated in 48 hours. Her company's valuation plummeted. And the worst part? They began a formal investigation. The kind where every detail of her professional history would be dragged out into the light. The kind that made even innocent people look guilty. And Vanessa? She was not innocent. Not in the ways that mattered. Not in the ways I knew. There was one last card I had to play. A personal one. I made a copy of the email thread she'd sent 6 years ago. The one where she'd bribed a city inspector to shut down my mother's charity center. She had claimed it was unsafe, but it wasn't. It was just inconvenient. It had made her look small, so she made it disappear. I sent those emails to a journalist. Anonymous tip. They were published within the week, and the fallout was delicious. My father confronted her publicly. He was shocked, broken. He hadn't believed me when I told him before, but now the evidence was in black and white. He filed for divorce 2 weeks later, and he added a clause. All family assets returned to a trust under Kyle's and my name. Vanessa had been locked out. Her fortune, her empire, built on lies and manipulation, crumbled. And I didn't gloat. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. Because true revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's precise. It's justice dressed in silence. At Thanksgiving that year, Kyle raised his glass to me. To the best damn mechanic I know, he said. Everyone laughed. Even Dad. But not Vanessa. She wasn't invited. She was on the news, sitting before a panel of investigators, trying to explain how she lost $600 million in 2 weeks. She looked smaller on screen. Not powerful, not composed, just a woman undone by her own arrogance. And behind her fall was me, the girl she called just a mechanic. Funny how engines work. They might seem quiet, unassuming, but if you take one out, nothing moves. And sometimes if you know exactly where to twist the wrench, you don't just stop the engine. You make the whole damn machine explode. It didn't take long before the silence broke. She reached out to me, not directly, but through Kyle, through mutual friends, through old employees who suddenly remembered my number. They said she was going through a hard time, that she regrets what she said, that she wants to talk. I didn't respond. Not at first, because I wanted to see how far she would fall before she remembered I existed. Weeks passed. Then months. The media storm faded, but her name still trended online every time another failed executive merger was mentioned. People started calling it a Vanessa, meaning a promising deal ruined by ego. She became the punchline, the cautionary tale. And still, she tried to claw her way back. She emailed me in December. The subject line was just one word, please. I opened it. The message was short. I know I've made mistakes. I'm sorry for what I said at the wedding. I didn't mean it. You're not just anything. You're brilliant. You've always been brilliant. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keys, and for a split second a part of me considered it. Because I wasn't cruel by nature. I didn't hate her. I pitied her. But then I remembered my mother's face, her tears the day she was forced to shut down her charity. I remembered how Vanessa stood there, smiling, pretending she had nothing to do with it. I remembered the look on my father's face when the news broke, his disbelief, his heartbreak. I remembered every time she looked at me like I was less, not because I lacked talent, but because I didn't fit her mold, because I didn't play her game. And I realized something. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some wounds don't need closure. They need distance. I typed a reply. It was only one sentence. You taught me the value of silence, so I'm giving it back to you. Then I hit send and blocked her. For good. A week later, a letter came in the mail. Handwritten. The handwriting was shaky, emotional. She said she was losing everything, that she might have to sell her home, that people she once trusted were turning on her, that she was afraid, alone. She ended the letter with a single plea: I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't see you for who you are. But I see you now. And I'm sorry. Please forgive me." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not out of cruelty, but out of finality. I had already forgiven her. But I hadn't forgotten. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the place where you were wounded. It means walking away without bleeding anymore. By spring, I bought my own estate, overlooking the Pacific. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't grand, but it was mine. Every square foot paid for by my hands, my mind, and the silence I had kept all those years. Dad came to visit sometimes. He was quieter now, more thoughtful. He apologized for not believing me sooner, for letting someone else's opinion of me cloud his own. We talked late into the night about Mom, about all the ways she had been erased by Vanessa's rise. He cried. I listened. We didn't need revenge between us, just healing. Kyle kept thriving too. He finally saw Vanessa for who she was. He supported me through everything. Not because he agreed with every move I made, but because he understood. Sometimes the only way to clean a wound is to cut deep, burn out the infection, and start over. The world didn't know what happened behind the scenes. They only saw headlines. They didn't see the years of humiliation, the manipulation, the quiet gaslighting. But I did. And I did something about it. Now when I walk through my home, when I sit on the balcony overlooking the ocean, I don't feel rage or guilt. I feel peace. Because I didn't destroy Vanessa. She destroyed herself. I just gave her the mirror and the silence. And in the end, that was louder than any words I could have spoken. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought you were just something? Just the mechanic, just the assistant, just the girl in the background? If so, tell your story. Let your silence speak louder than their arrogance. And never forget, sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be.